But I am actually happy that men and people in general are having less sex today outside of marriage than ever before. If you're married, you should be having lots of sex.
Probably heard that hookup culture only hurts women and primarily benefits men. And
now I actually have heard this, but I think with this video we're going to find out that it doesn't just affect women, it also affects men. So let's see.
Although I can understand why people say that, the truth is that's not quite the case. Men are hurt by hookup culture in several ways that no one seems to be talking about. Let's start with the male motivation. Now, aside from the physical pleasure that comes from sex, men today are given the message that it's more masculine to hook up with lots of beautiful women, and especially if you can do so without getting attached. Today, the men who have access to lots of women who are willing to hook up with them are men who are seen as having a higher social value and are also seen as being more spontaneous, powerful, and in many ways more valuable.
You know, this was something that was really popularized or had been popularized lately with Kevin Samuels and people of that sphere on YouTube that are advocating that men, in a way, especially high value men, have all the options, I guess, and there's no reason to settle down and just be with one woman.
Before we get to casual hookups and how it affects these men, first we should acknowledge what this implies for those that aren't hooking up with women. The message that these men often hear in our culture is that they aren't as valuable as the men who get the girls, or at minimum, they're seen as lacking in some way. They're made to feel...
They were, I think, what's this guy's name? Peter Morgan, I think is his name. He had a couple of women on the show, and they were talking about how they were concerned because the rate at which like men were having sex had dropped, and the mothers on the show were concerned because that meant somehow that their children were not going to have a fulfilled life. It was pretty weird.
Like they're uniquely flawed or that something's wrong with them. But statistically speaking, the number of men who are either virgins or have not had sex in the last year has been on a steep rise in the last 10 to 15.
Okay, so here it is. It looks like men, by 10% or so, are not having as much sex as they had before.
15 years. Now, my point in saying this is that, given that hooking up with several women in our culture today has been taken as a sign of high personal value, that's created a massive void where now, more than ever before, young men who aren't hooking up with women are starting to feel confused, lost, and in some cases worthless, since they either choose to remain celibate or aren't able to attract women who desire them sexually. So,
to be honest with you, I don't see how this is a problem. When I first heard about this, I thought that was a great thing. And if this is being caused by social media or something like that, this is a blessing in disguise, because I feel like as a culture, we've gotten way too promiscuous. And the fact that men are having less sex outside of marriage, I think is a great thing. Keep it up. Have less sex.
Hooking up with multiple women impacts your life in far more ways than what's obvious at that time, and it starts to take you further away from what you truly and ultimately want. One of the ways it does so is found in the fact that when we have sex, our brains release chemicals called oxytocin and vasopressin, which help us to...
The fact that he has this nice video of a brain here makes me think that what he's saying is correct.
Bond with and to trust other people. These chemicals are responsible for establishing a chemical bond in our brains with other people, and the more times that we have sex with someone, the more that those bonding connections deepen. So sex has the potential to deepen a bond between two people unlike anything else on this planet, but the downside is that breaking this bond is painful, which is why most men in hookup culture want hookups without the bonding. But this too isn't without its consequences, because the more that we establish these bonds and break them, we start to train our brains to not associate bonding with sex.
I think this makes sense. I mean, God created sex to be within the boundaries of marriage, and it was meant not only for procreation, but also to bring you closer together as a couple.
As a way to protect ourselves from the pain that comes from breaking those bonds. Now, some guys might be hearing this and they might consider it to be the optimal situation because they only want the benefits that come from hookups. And in some ways, this could be a better situation for them, but that's only until they find the woman that they truly do want to have a deep and lasting bond with.
So what he's saying is that because you're training yourself to not take advantage of what sex is meant for, then you're setting yourself up for a disadvantage when you want to actually use sex for its proper purpose within the boundaries of somebody that you want to be with long term, i.e. marriage. This is why God created sex to be had within the boundaries of marriage.
Even for most of the guys that are deep in a hookup culture, they'll even tell you that they want to play the field until they find the right woman to commit to. So the end goal is still commitment to the right woman.
This doesn't make sense to me, because if you are hooking up with women, right, and like that's your game, that's what you like to do, and in doing so, you're quote unquote trying to find the woman that you're going to be with long term. Think about it. Like, do you really want a promiscuous woman as your lifelong partner? Probably not. I mean, if you look out there, some of these red pill guys, they say themselves like they don't want a promiscuous woman, but yet what are they doing? They're going after promiscuous women in order to find the woman that they want to be with long term. Like, that entire approach is asinine and it doesn't make any sense at all. Look, guys, at the end of the day, God had a design for humanity. He had a design for marriage. He had a design for sex and how it's meant to be had. And when you stray from the pattern that he has laid out, which is exactly what we've done as a society, you're not going to find anything good. You're going to find nothing but issues, and this is what we are seeing today. But I am actually happy that men and people in general are having less sex today outside of marriage than ever before. If you're married, you should be having lots of sex. All right, guys, so this is all that I had for you today. As always, I just want to remind you that we must persevere.